On the 7th anniversary of my relationship with my girlfriend, I realized I was just a stand-in for her crush. The hairstyle she asked me to get was his. The clothes she bought me were his. She didn't even remember my tastes over the 7 years we'd been together. I thought she had simply forgotten, but in reality, she thought my preferences were the same as his. It wasn't until my birthday that she brought me a cake that he liked. She took a call, and without hesitation, dropped everything to leave. 7 years. I finally saw clearly. Everything I had was just an illusion. It was time for me to leave and make room for them. Chapter 1. The phone screen still displayed the photos taken last night, chat records between my girlfriend, Juliet, who I'd been in love with for 7 years, and another man. That man was her crush, the one who had always been on her heart. I dialed my mother's number. Mom, about that blind date you set up for me. I've decided to go through with it. My mom sounded surprised. You've finally come to your senses, but why the sudden change of heart? You used to say you only wanted to marry Juliet. What happened? Thinking back on my bold claims, I only felt like a fool. Seeing my silence, my mother shifted the topic. That girl's about to go back to her country soon. In about half a month. I'll arrange for you two to meet then. Just after hanging up, I heard the sound of the door opening from the hallway. Juliet walked in, smiling, her body carrying the chill of the outdoors, holding a box of birthday cake. I waited in line for a long time to get this for you. Let's see how it tastes. I took the cake from her and opened the box. As expected, it was matcha-flavored cake. I closed the box without a word. Juliet sat beside me and linked her arm with mine. What's wrong? Who made RK unhappy? I lowered my head, trying to hide the tears welling up in my eyes. 7 years. I had told Juliet countless times that I didn't like matcha, that I didn't eat it. What I liked was vanilla-flavored cake, but she never remembered. She always bought me matcha. I used to think she just had a bad memory, or maybe matcha was the only flavor available. Until 3 days ago, Juliet went to take a shower, leaving her phone outside. A Twitter notification popped up on her screen. How could there be such a great invention as matcha cake? Matcha is so delicious. The account belonged to someone Juliet had particularly followed. For some reason, my heart raced in that moment, as if something I hadn't noticed was about to be revealed. I searched for the account K on my phone and scrolled through his Twitter feed. Going over the past few years, he was an optimistic, charismatic guy who loved life, handsome and well-traveled. He was full of charm. He was abroad but would be returning soon. His real name was K. How could their names be so similar? I scrolled through Juliet's Twitter and suddenly everything clicked. Juliet didn't like sweet foods, let alone milk tea. It didn't fit her character at all. Then I understood. K liked matcha. That was when I finally understood why. Despite having only met me once before, Juliet had pursued me so obsessively. Why? For 7 years, she had pampered me and always called me K. Why she kept buying me matcha-flavored desserts, even after I'd told her countless times I didn't like them. She had never been calling me K. She'd always been calling out to K. Juliet didn't notice the change in me, still trying to comfort me like she always did. If you're feeling tired, a bit of sweet food might cheer you up. This matcha cake from this shop is really good. Try it. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a heavy stone. I shouted. I said I hate matcha. Juliet froze for a moment, surprised by my sudden outburst. Just then, the phone rang. Juliet answered the call, and her face lit up with joy. Really? That's great. I'll be right there. When she hung up, her hands were still trembling slightly. She hurriedly left without saying anything. Looking at the empty living room, I whispered, but today is my birthday. I had a strange premonition. I opened K's Twitter. He had just posted a new update, an airport photo. The caption read, "Finally back in the country." So today was the day K was returning, and I, as the stand-in, was about to disappear. Chapter 2. I spent the whole night packing and sorting my personal belongings, clothes, books, and all the little things I'd accumulated over the years. I used to think this was our home, a place we both put endless effort into decorating. But now, these things, along with me, needed to leave this home, to make space for the real man of the house. The next morning, Juliet came back home, drenched from the rain. She looked at me, her eyes briefly avoiding mine, and gave a nervous smile. Why are you up so early? Why didn't you sleep a little longer? The air is good in the morning. She nodded. Okay, I'm going to take a shower first, Juliet. I stopped her. What's up, K? I said calmly. You came back very late last night. Oh, I was working overtime at the company. The client suddenly gave us new tasks, and I was up all night. When people lie, they often become overly talkative, afraid you might not believe them, so they add more details. She usually wasn't this talkative. Most of the time, she was brief. Even when comforting me, I just wanted to ask. I said, you were wearing a jacket when you left last night. Where's the jacket? Left it at the office. She visibly relaxed and smiled. Yeah, I left it at the office. Don't worry, I'm not cold. Okay, then go ahead and take a shower. She came closer and gently rubbed my hair. You're worried about me, my K. I turned my head to avoid her hand, standing with my back to her by the window. You should go. Wearing wet clothes isn't good. Her hand froze in midair. Looking at her damp shirt, she laughed. You don't like me being wet. Huh? I won't get you wet. Don't worry. Soon, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. I had never gone through Juliet's phone. She had never been secretive with me. Her phone was always casually left out in the open. The screen lit up. K, Juliet, have you made it home? K, I just washed and hung up your clothes. Actually, I wasn't that surprised. When she left last night, she had been in a hurry, her face flustered, and I had already guessed something was off, but speculation and seeing it with my own eyes were two different things. I picked up my phone and opened K's Twitter. He had just updated a post. It was a video. K was holding Juliet's hand as they ran in the heavy rain. In the end, they held hands, and Juliet laughed, a laugh I had never seen before. So carefree. Juliet came out of the bathroom, drying her hair. Did my phone ring? It vibrated. She quickly rushed over, snatching the phone out of my hand. The force was surprising. After replying to the message, she seemed to realize she had overreacted. She awkwardly explained, the client was rushing me to send something. Did I hurt you? It's fine, I interrupted. You go ahead. I'm going for a walk. She grabbed my wrist as I turned to leave. Kay, are you mad at me? No. It felt like I didn't even have the right to be angry. Juliet glanced over at the corner of the living room, where a few large trash bags were piled up. Did you do a big cleanup last night? Why's there so much stuff to throw away? Yeah, she smiled. Okay, don't worry about it. I'll take it down later. Juliet, have you noticed something missing from the bathroom? No, I didn't. Is the shower gel finished? I can go buy some. I merely nodded. In the bathroom, our towels, toothbrushes, and slippers were all couple-themed. They were always placed close together. Her towel was pink, and mine was blue. Last night, I packed up all my things and prepared to throw them away. But she didn't notice. Maybe she was too preoccupied. Or maybe she had never cared. It didn't matter anymore. My time with Juliet, my former home, it was all over. Chapter 3. On the weekend, I accompanied Juliet to her classmates' reunion. I was secretly curious about Kay. The one Juliet had mentioned often over the years. What kind of person could he be? When we arrived at the KTV, the room was already filled with laughter and chatter. Juliet's friend Olivia threw her arms around her. You're finally here. Kay's already here. You're finally going to get what you wanted. Juliet looked a bit flustered and interrupted Olivia. Stop saying that. Olivia laughed and retorted. How is that just saying? We all know how you feel about Kay, don't we? At that moment, Olivia noticed me standing off to the side and asked curiously, who's this? Juliet awkwardly introduced me. This is my boyfriend. Olivia was shocked. Your boyfriend? When did that happen? Didn't you always say you were waiting for Kay? Juliet didn't answer directly, and the atmosphere turned awkward. Just then, a handsome and charismatic figure emerged from the crowd. It was Kay. His voice came through. Who's got a boyfriend? Olivia quickly waved him over. Come over here. Juliet says she's got a boyfriend. I don't believe it. Kay's arrival gave me the chance to see this legendary figure. He was indeed extraordinarily handsome. No wonder Juliet had never been able to forget him after all these years. Kay looked at me, a hint of skepticism and hostility in his eyes. He asked, Julie, is this really your boyfriend? Juliet hesitated, looking somewhat troubled. I spoke up. I'm just here to pick something up. I left it here before. Juliet seemed to relax, but the surprise in her eyes didn't fade. Olivia, curious, asked, what did you leave behind? I casually answered, cufflinks. Olivia replied, the cleaning lady already cleaned up. You can ask her. I nodded and turned to leave. Behind me, Olivia continued teasing Juliet. Are you trying to make Kay jealous? This guy just came to pick up something, and you're using him like that. She then turned to Kay and said, look at what you've done to Juliet. It's been years now. You should give her some kind of response. Kay's tone lightened. Julie and I are just best friends. Stop worrying about us. I stopped walking and looked back. Juliet was staring at Kay, her gaze suddenly dimming. She gave a bitter smile and echoed Kay's words. Yeah, we're just best friends. Chapter 4. When Juliet came home, I was watching the evening news. She smiled lightly, though the smile seemed somewhat forced. When did you start caring about current affairs? I remember you never used to be interested in these things. I gave a faint smile and replied, maybe it's because there are too many fake things in life, and I wanted to find some sense of reality in the news. Juliet's eyes flickered slightly, as if she understood something. She sighed softly and spoke slowly. Kay, you might be misunderstanding something. My relationship with Kay is purely friendship. Olivia tends to speak without thinking, so don't take her words too seriously. Oh, I see, I responded calmly. Yes, that's exactly it, she emphasized again. I turned to look at her, my eyes carrying a trace of curiosity. Do you really think that men and women can have purely platonic friendships? Juliet froze for a moment. Then her expression grew more complex. I believe it's possible. I noticed her thoughts seemed to wander, probably thinking of Kay, even though everyone knew how she felt about him. Even though she had silently waited for Kay for all these years, to him, she was always just the best friend. He enjoyed Juliet's care, but had never given her a clear response. And how should I define Kay's feelings for Juliet? Just then, Juliet's phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. She glanced at the screen, her face slightly changing before she grabbed her car keys and started to head out. Kay, she hesitated. Let me guess, something urgent at work again, I said calmly. You go ahead, don't let work get delayed. Juliet seemed like she wanted to say more, but the phone started ringing again. Kay's voice came through the receiver, sounding a bit anxious. Julie, did you see my message? Come over quickly. I saw it. I'll be there soon, Juliet responded. Before leaving, she said to me, Kay, don't overthink things. Just get some rest. I'll bring you your favorite matcha latte tomorrow. Heh. She was still thinking about what Kay liked. I nodded quietly, and before she finished speaking, Juliet had already rushed out. I looked around at the empty room, a strange feeling of sadness swelling in my chest. I realized with a pang that even when she said, Kay, I wasn't sure who she was calling. Was she calling me, or was she speaking through me, calling someone else's name? Sometimes, I felt like I was just creating trouble for myself. I knew it would hurt, yet I couldn't stop checking Kay's Twitter. He was once again sharing sweet moments with Juliet. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a private message from Kay, enjoying spying on my Twitter. I didn't reply, just placed the phone face down on the table. But Kay didn't stop there. He sent another message. Aren't you brave? Let's meet. I'll tell you everything you want to know about Juliet and me. Chapter 5. When I walked into the cafe, Kay was already sitting there. He sized me up as I approached, sneering. Looks like after Juliet left me, your taste has dropped quite a bit. I frowned. What do you want from me, sir? His eyes glinted with amusement, as if enjoying the power he held over the situation. You should know, the only reason you're with Juliet is because our names sound similar. She sees you as a substitute, and what if I do? I replied coolly. Kay leaned back, smugly. All of Juliet's ex-boyfriends have had a little bit of me in them. As soon as I say I don't like someone, she breaks up with them immediately. I couldn't help but say, if you know how she feels about you, why do you treat her like this? Kay's smile grew more arrogant. She likes it this way. I enjoy it too. What are you going to do about it? I didn't want to waste any more words with him and started to turn to leave. But Kay called after me. Wait, if you beg me, I can make Juliet stay with you. I stopped and turned to face him. What do you really want? Kay's smile was sly. Nothing. Just for fun. Don't you think it's amusing watching a woman dance in your palm? I ignored him and kept walking toward the door. Suddenly, Kay grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away, but he held on tightly. He looked at me provocatively. Why don't we just wait and see how she chooses? Crazy, I muttered under my breath. I tried to shake off his hand and leave, but suddenly, I heard a loud scream from behind me. I was sure I had just shrugged off his hand. Kay, what did you do? Hearing the familiar voice, I immediately knew what Kay was trying to do. Juliet was glaring at me angrily, as if I were the most despicable person. I didn't do anything. Juliet's gaze darted between the two of us, filled with doubt. Kay, looking pitiful, said, Julie, it hurts so much. Chapter 6. Tears quickly filled Kay's eyes. Julie, why are you only here now? Juliet almost ran over, kneeling beside him. I'm sorry, I'm late. Where are you hurt? My foot hurts so much, it's killing me. Kay sobbed. Without hesitation, Juliet helped him up. I'll take you to the hospital. But Kay's still there. Kay weakly pointed at me standing by the side. I watched coldly as the two of them played out their drama, the men crying, the woman showing concern, as if they were performing some heartfelt scene. Even a passerby remarked to Juliet, your girlfriend really loves you. I couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration, almost wanting to laugh. Even strangers thought they were a couple, while I, the real boyfriend, hadn't been acknowledged by Juliet even once. Juliet's eyes widened in fury, like an enraged lioness. Her anger aimed straight at me. Whatever dissatisfaction you have, take it out on me. Why hurt Kay? If something happens to Kay, will you take responsibility for the consequences? I didn't know how to explain. And frankly, this wasn't something I had to explain. Kay, lying in Juliet's arms, pulled her up with great consideration. I'm fine. Don't overreact. Kay definitely didn't do it on purpose. Kay, you're just too kind. Juliet's voice was filled with affection. The concern in her eyes was so obvious now. I can't imagine how you've managed all these years abroad. How much hardship you've endured. I didn't want to argue about this farce any longer, and I didn't want to keep watching it unfold. If you're really worried, take him to the hospital for a thorough checkup. I'll cover the medical fees and lost wages. I'm leaving now, I said. Stop, Juliet called out. Apologize. I turned back in disbelief, meeting her cold, menacing gaze. What did you say? I said. Apologize to Kay now. I was so angry I almost laughed. Juliet, do you want to check the surveillance footage and understand what actually happened before you judge who should apologize? Isn't it you who pushed him? Since you pushed him, then apologize. The one who should apologize isn't me. If you're so upset, call the police. I turned and walked away, hailing a cab. As I sat in the car, the driver asked, Hey, kid, why are you crying? I wiped my face and realized I was already in tears. I'm not. You say you're not. Did you have a fight with your girlfriend? The driver pressed. I looked out the window, knowing in my heart that this wasn't just a simple fight. The moment she told me to apologize, our relationship had ended. When I got home, I quickly packed a few things, preparing to leave the place I had once thought of as a sanctuary. My mom called me. Son, did you buy your flight ticket? What day is it? On the 8th, I answered. Oh, so it's soon. Let me know when you've got your ticket. I'll pick you up from the airport. It's fine, Mom. I can manage. Well, it's not me picking you up. The girl you're being set up with wants to meet you at the airport. By the way, let me know if you need anything to stay. I'll prepare it for you in the next few days. I glanced around the empty room. I don't need anything, Mom. Just prepare an empty room for me. All right. Then take care and be safe on your trip. This time, I made the choice to let go of Juliet. Chapter 7. I once thought that this city was my home, that leaving it would be unbearably painful. But the moment I stepped onto the plane, I surprisingly felt a sense of relief. It turns out, letting go wasn't as hard as I had imagined. I didn't bring anything with me except for my checked luggage. I gave one last look out the window, when my phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was her, Juliet. She was still insisting that I apologize to Kay. Just then, the flight attendant reminded me, Sir, the plane is about to take off. Please turn off your phone or switch it to flight mode. I complied, watching as my phone screen slowly darkened. And for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Juliet had called several times, but I hadn't answered. She dialed again. The number you have dialed is not in service, the automated voice said. She hung up in frustration, her expression displeased. Kay, sitting across from her, lifted his foot and lightly nudged her calf, scolding. I was talking to you just now. You didn't hear me, did you? Sorry. Juliet rubbed her forehead, explaining. What did you say? Kay immediately smiled. I'm sitting right here, and you're still thinking about someone else. Juliet hesitated for a moment before admitting. Kay's phone is always on 24/7. He once told me it was in case I wanted to contact him and couldn't reach him. But today his phone's been off the whole time. A sense of unease crept into my heart. What if something happened to him? Just as the thought crossed my mind, Kay's words interrupted my train of thought. He smiled more brightly. You should worry about him, but you're a woman, so you don't understand men's thoughts. He's probably waiting for you to get anxious and call him. Apologize. Try to cheer him up, and admit you were wrong. Then he'll get to boss you around from a high position. At that moment, Juliet's thoughts shifted, and she sneered. Yeah, what could happen to him? It was just his usual temper, throwing a tantrum over something that had happened before. She wasn't wrong, and she shouldn't have to bow down to him for no reason. Kay then casually added, by the way, I just saw that a really popular milk tea shop opened nearby. You can't order online. You have to line up in person, but I don't want to go out. Can you go buy it for me? Juliet had never refused his requests, and of course, this time was no different. She didn't care about Kay's whereabouts anymore, and left to stand in line for Kay's milk tea. At that moment, I had already arrived in another city. To get home as quickly as possible, I didn't bring any extra luggage with me. After disembarking, I took a taxi straight home. When I arrived at the entrance of my neighborhood, I took a deep breath, as if I had returned to my own world. I told myself, no one would ever be able to hurt me again. Chapter 8. I didn't expect that after walking just a few steps, my suitcase would be snatched away. I chased the thief for a long time, but in the end, I couldn't catch up. I even got injured in the process of trying to reclaim the suitcase. Inside that suitcase were photos with my parents. Those were the most important things to me. And finally, I broke down. I leaned against the wall and slowly squatted down, burying my face in my arms as tears silently fell. My sobs weren't loud, but the tears quickly soaked my sleeves. As I wallowed in my sadness, a gentle voice sounded from beside me. Excuse me, are you feeling upset? Perhaps I can help. I looked up through my tear-blurred eyes and saw a soft, kind face. She looked to be in her early 30s, wearing a camel-colored coat with a delicate silk scarf around her neck. Her appearance immediately evoked words like gentle and intellectual, and her tone was soothing as she continued. Don't worry, I'm not a bad person. It's getting late, but if you don't want to tell me what happened, I can help you call a cab and get you home. I paused for a moment, then, without thinking, stopped crying and began to pour out my troubles to her. She calmly reassured me, don't worry, this place isn't too complicated. If you need, I can go with you to the police. I'm quite familiar with the area. She handed me a tissue, and a warm sensation spread through me. She stayed patient and gentle, never leaving my side. Seeing that my eyes were still red, she suggested, you must remember the person's appearance and how they were dressed. How about I take you to the police station to have a look? Realizing that searching aimlessly was pointless, I agreed to her suggestion and decided to try my luck at the station. With her accompanying me, we arrived at a nearby police station. Time ticked by slowly, and it wasn't until late at night that I realized how much time had passed. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I said, it's getting late. You can head back if you'd like. She shook her head and continued to stay with me. After working for the entire night, we finally found my suitcase. I took the recovered item, overwhelmed with emotion and almost on the verge of tears. I thanked them profusely. I really can't thank you enough. Take a look first. I'll handle the paperwork, Chloe said softly. When I had calmed down and was ready to take care of the procedures, I realized she had already completed them and was back by my side. We walked out of the station together, standing under the soft glow of the streetlights. I said gratefully, thank you for staying with me. Could I get your name and number? As soon as I said it, I realized my request might have been too forward, so I quickly added, I just want to properly thank you after I've settled down. It was late at night, and I had nothing to give her in return. Chloe smiled lightly, took a business card from her suit pocket, and handed it to me. It was nothing. Don't worry about it. But if you want to contact me, my details are on the card. Feel free to reach out if you ever need anything. In this era of WeChat and QR codes, business cards had become a rarity. I took the gold embossed card with both hands, silently repeating her name, Chloe. What surprised me even more was the title on her card, Senior Lawyer. I had always assumed that lawyers were aggressive and decisive, but Chloe's gentle demeanor had completely shattered my expectations. Before long, the clock ticked past midnight. At this hour, it was difficult to find a taxi, and Chloe suggested, since we've exchanged names, we're no longer strangers. I'll give you a ride home. Her every word and action felt as refreshing as a spring breeze, and I readily accepted her offer. She asked me to wait on the curb for a moment while she went to get her car. We talked about various topics, some scattered, but the atmosphere was pleasant and easy. Before long, we arrived at my neighborhood. I noticed that Chloe seemed quite familiar with the area, as she drove directly through a side entrance close to the residential buildings. I was curious but didn't ask any questions. However, just as we were about to part ways, a familiar voice called out to us, Sue Lawyer, Kay, how come you two are coming back together? It was my mother, whom I hadn't seen in a while. I hadn't expected to run into her downstairs with Chloe. I was confused. Mom, do you know her? My mother nodded. Of course I do. Sue Lawyer was the one who helped me win my divorce case. Without her, I might have only gotten custody of the kids and had to give up some of my assets. Now, I've managed to keep most of the property, all thanks to her. After explaining how she knew Chloe, my mom sighed and added, actually, I was planning to introduce you two a while ago, but back then, you only had eyes for Juliet. I awkwardly looked away. That was indeed true. Back then, I was consumed by Juliet, and I never considered anyone else. Now, looking back, maybe the world had been trying to stop me from making a wrong decision. Chloe smiled and casually said, I was also busy with cases at the time and didn't have the time for personal matters. Besides, if we had met then, it might have been a bit awkward. She skillfully defused the awkwardness and explained how we had met. My mother only mentioned it in passing and didn't press further. She smiled and invited us. Before I go out, your dad is preparing breakfast. Sue Lawyer, he's been wanting to properly thank you. Since you've helped Kay again, why don't you stay and have a meal with us? I had something on my mind, but I didn't say much. I was supportive of the idea. After all, I owed Chloe a favor, and I was happy to show my gratitude. However, Chloe smiled and declined politely. I'd love to try your parents' cooking, but it's already daylight. If I don't go home and change into something else for work, my colleagues will think I've been wearing the same outfit for 2 days straight. For a lawyer, image was indeed important. Mom didn't insist but asked me to thank Chloe again. As we said our goodbyes, I couldn't help but feel that Chloe had something more to say to me. Chapter 9. On the weekend, I finished a brief rest at home and arrived at the book signing event in the best possible spirits. For someone like me, a columnist, a book signing event after the release of a novel is like a fan meet and greet. Most of the people who come to buy the book are my loyal readers. The line for signing was unexpectedly long. I patiently responded to every fan's request, from taking photos to leaving messages on the book's title page, making sure to meet each request. But after a while, my arm began to feel tired. Just as I was about to sign a book, a delicate hand support tray appeared before me, still with the label on. It wasn't uncommon to receive small gifts from fans at a signing event, but this thoughtful gesture was rare. I initially thought the gift was from a young girl, so I looked up, ready to thank her with a smile, but instead, I found myself meeting Chloe's gaze, her eyes warm and smiling. She was one of my readers. This discovery took me by surprise, and I was momentarily stunned, almost forgetting that I was at a book signing event. Chloe softly said, "You've been signing for so long, your arm must be tired. This hand support will help you feel more comfortable." I tried it out, and indeed, it made me feel much better. Gratefully, I said, "Thank you. Would you like me to write something for you?" "Just write that this book is for me," Chloe replied, then added, "I originally only wanted to give you the hand support, but since everyone is in line, I decided to follow the customs." Her decision to wait in line helped avoid any possible controversy, but it also unexpectedly became the focus of attention. Fans began to wonder about our relationship, and Chloe cleverly stood up to explain. She had brought warm milk tea as a thank you gift for the other fans, smoothly resolving any speculation about our connection. I understood her intentions when she passed me a look, and although this wasn't my arrangement, I couldn't deny it publicly. I had to go along with the flattering narrative. As the fans received their milk tea, they started teasing, guessing if we were the prototypes of the male and female leads in the book, and some even asked if we were about to get married. I smiled and clarified, "I'm single right now, and the story in the book is in the past." Chapter 10. Over time, Chloe and I became closer. We often made plans to eat out or go shopping, and she took me around, helping me get familiar with the area and every corner of the neighborhood. She asked me if I still harbored feelings for my ex-girlfriend, the one who had once been deeply engraved in my heart. "I've long let go of her," I answered without hesitation, even shaking my head as if to completely erase the chapter from my memory. The moment I decided to leave, I had already let it all go. Chloe seemed to breathe a sigh of relief upon hearing this. "So, have you thought it through? Would you consider giving me a chance?" I looked at her and smiled slightly. "Actually, I agreed to have dinner with you because I wanted to see. Maybe we could be really happy together." However, Chloe said something that completely took me by surprise. "Okay, I understand. I'll make sure my niece stops bothering her ex-boyfriend soon." "Is there any connection between these two things?" I asked, confused. A bizarre thought suddenly flashed through my mind. "Chloe, Juliet." I stared at her in shock. "Your niece, wouldn't it be Juliet?" Chloe nodded apologetically, her smile faint. "I should have told you sooner, but I only just confirmed this. I had a feeling about your relationship with her." Realizing the age gap between us, I was slightly stunned. "So, you're her aunt?" I knew she had an aunt, but I didn't expect you to be so young. When the age difference is related to a potential romantic partner, it feels more significant, but when it's a family member, it just makes her look unexpectedly young. "Yes, since I'm not much older than Juliet, she usually calls me Little Aunt," Chloe patiently explained. "I actually knew about her having a partner, but I didn't know the specifics. My career focus is in Haicheng, so I spend most of my time there." I chuckled lightly. "It's understandable. After all, she never planned on bringing me home to meet her family. But don't worry, you'll soon meet her partner, the one she's willing to publicly acknowledge." Chloe looked at me with a gentle gaze. "You must have been through a lot." I shook my head, signaling that I no longer cared. "It's all in the past. They made me angry, but I didn't do anything." Chloe tried to force a smile, but like me, it was clear that she couldn't. To love someone for 7 years and then find out you were just a stand-in, no one could smile about that. I looked at her seriously. "So, do you still want to be with me now?" She replied calmly, yet with certainty. "Of course. You've agreed to try, and I won't let anyone else have you." In that moment, I felt the warmth of being chosen with such certainty. Chloe asked with concern, "Are you okay? Did this news shock you?" "No," I shook my head. "I was just wondering, if we're together, what will she call me? Uncle?" The idea of shifting roles within the family made me chuckle, but Chloe laughed too. "If you don't mind, you can certainly call yourself that." We shared a smile. That dinner was incredibly pleasant. The rapport between us seemed to surpass that of two people who had only just met through an arranged encounter. It felt more like a couple who had supported each other through thick and thin. When we parted downstairs, Chloe gently said, "My situation with Juliet shouldn't affect how you see me. If you have any concerns, I'll find a way to resolve them." I smiled and shook my head. "Your family, and that's something that can't change, but I won't let that affect us." Chloe gazed at me, her eyes shining with a determined light. "I won't let the past affect our future, either." Chapter 11. What I hadn't expected was that Juliet would actually come over. "Juliet, you should know my methods. If it weren't for the fact that you're my niece, Kay would have already been my partner," Chloe said, her voice calm but firm. With Chloe's words, Juliet's fist clenched tightly and swung toward her. Chloe had anticipated this and quickly sidestepped, but her cheekbone was still grazed. The two of them instantly began to wrestle with each other, and the air around us seemed to freeze. The noise from the sudden scuffle caught the attention of the nearby residents, including myself. In a panic, I didn't even have time to put on my jacket. I rushed downstairs at the fastest pace I could manage and shoved Juliet aside. With the help of others, the two women were finally separated, both unwilling to back down. "Kay," Juliet called out, her voice frantic, as soon as she saw me. However, the next moment, she watched as I walked toward Chloe. I nervously examined the scratch on Chloe's cheekbone, gently touching it and asking, "Are you okay? Are there any other injuries?" Chloe took a shallow breath and said, "It's fine, just a small scrape." Throughout the entire ordeal, I didn't spare Juliet a single glance, as if she didn't even exist. Juliet touched her own bruised face, a painful reminder of Chloe's retaliatory strike, and the pain was sharp, piercing. The situation was completely different from what she had imagined. In the past, whenever I was around, my gaze would always fall on her first, no matter where I was. But now, my attention was on someone else. Juliet couldn't accept this reality. She took a step toward me, wanting to tell me that she had realized her mistake, but at that moment, Chloe stepped in front of me. I stood still, watching Juliet. Juliet's heart trembled, and in a low, pleading voice, she said, "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I came to bring you back to our home." This was the first time since we had been together that she admitted she had made a mistake, but it no longer mattered to me. I shook my head, firmly replying, "But we're already over." With that, I helped Chloe and we went back to our home. Once inside, I immediately grabbed the first aid kit, using tweezers to hold a cotton ball soaked in saline solution and carefully cleaned Chloe's wound. Our eyes met, and the space between us seemed to shrink. I could clearly hear her breath and heartbeat. In that charged atmosphere, Chloe gazed at me with deep affection. My ears turned slightly red, and I felt a little embarrassed. Chloe, influenced by the mood, suddenly opened up to me. "You might not believe it, but I've liked you for a long time. It's just that Juliet confessed first, and you were so in love with her at that time. If your happiness was with her, I would have kept my feelings hidden for a lifetime. But now that you've chosen me, I won't let go." Chapter 12. 3 months later, Juliet received an invitation to my wedding with her little aunt. It was an exquisitely designed card, and the inside displayed a photo of Chloe and me, our faces full of smiles and radiating happiness. She walked into a bar alone, wanting to drown her sorrows in alcohol, but the alcohol didn't numb her pain. Instead, it made her memories clearer than ever. Friends gathered around her, offering words of consolation. "You've been broken up for a long time. It's time to move on. Your ex is getting married, and life has to go on." "Yeah, that's fate," another friend agreed. "It might be awkward when you meet again, but life always moves forward. If you keep sinking into this, it's your body that will suffer." Each word felt like a sharp needle piercing Juliet's heart. She opened a bottle of hard liquor and drank it straight. Eventually, her rationality was overtaken by drunkenness, and she collapsed on the table. Seeing this, her friends had no choice but to rent a room for me at the hotel upstairs. After 2 days of deep sleep, she woke up on the eve of the wedding. Juliet didn't dare waste any more time. She immediately packed her things and flew to Haicheng. But when she arrived, the wedding was already nearing its end. In the center of the banquet hall, she saw me exchanging rings with Chloe, sharing a passionate kiss, a moment filled with joy, and Juliet quietly sat to the side, her eyes filled with mixed emotions. During the toasts, I wore a custom-made suit and raised my glass with Chloe, offering drinks to the guests. When I reached Juliet, she lightly raised her glass. "I wish you both happiness." I smiled and replied, "Thank you for coming." She forced a smile. "I wish you happiness too." Afterward, we both turned and continued to offer drinks to the other guests. Chloe stayed by my side the entire time, carefully helping me avoid alcohol, and we both enjoyed the happiness of the moment. After the wedding, we began to plan our honeymoon. Chloe gently asked, "Where do you want to go?" "My wedding leave is long, so I can go anywhere with you. How about traveling around the world?" I joked. "Sounds great," she replied cheerfully. "Let's go." And so, hand in hand, we walked toward the future, ready to be happy together forever.